Shadow.
3, 2, 1. We are back with Dad's Do 75 Hard, episode 13.
13. Lucky number 13.
That's
us.
right, I
For
guess.
the youngin' even.
Yeah.
I was thinking today, I'm like, man, this is going to be weird because I'm going to kind of be on the, usually I kind of ask the questions and like do that. So, yeah,
You
I
kind of
guess,
set the tone for
I guess,
us, and now it's kind of our
I'm going to sit back and try to answer these like I'm a politician.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah.
No comment. Yeah, so pass it to you guys and we can just get rolling.
Well, I'd like to actually start off by just giving some shout outs. I know we haven't had. We've had some people really kind of just take a turn. Some of our listeners that we've had have reached out to, I know, all of us.
Yep.
I've had one reach out. He hasn't drank in almost 30 days.
That's awesome.
And he's pretty much drank since he was probably in high school.
Wow.
And then, I've been getting texts from guys. They've always kind of prioritized their day, but they're just kind of like felt the need to kind of show me like this is kind of how they've been breaking down their days and their weeks and stuff. So it's just like accountability portion of just seeing that. Because one of them's a business owner, and then obviously Andy, who we officiate with, I think he's really listened to the podcast and it kind of hit home a little bit for him. He's really liked the fact that it's just normal people, people that he knows, just really trying to take this whole thing to a whole nother perspective.
Normal? You guys don't want to join our $100,000 coaching program? I'm just kidding.
Yeah. It's 14 steps.
Well, because he sent us the pictures this morning of his reading, and it looked like the Power Journal.
Oh, that's cool.
So, he's really, really getting into it, which is good.
Don't just listen, apply it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of like what really tugged on my heartstrings a lot is like, it's weird to actually know and see people apply some of the things we've talked about. So it's super cool.
Well,
But why we're doing it, like we applied these things, we saw how it benefited us, so we want to share that.
Yeah.
And we can't forget the big shout out that Kelsey doing the cold plunge for 5.5 minutes on her first time.
Boom.
No comment.
And you know what her biggest motivation was?
Me.
You.
What?
She's like, I just got to beat Colton's time.
Yeah.
I got to beat Colton's time.
They made a movie about her. I think it was called Hocus Pocus. Her and her two sisters.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yep. She keeps saying she's gonna go and do it again, but maybe I can talk to her doing them in the evenings instead of first thing in the morning.
I have to start April 1st, phase 1. So until then, I'm enjoying my warm showers.
We're gonna kind of. Will we talk about that more next week?
Yeah,
When
we'll get into phase 1 next week on day 1. Yeah,
Okay.
love it.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I want to open up with.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Shout out
It's a
all
great
the
start.
listeners. Continue
This
to
table, man.
Hey, don't be hate every week. You hate on my pressed wood table. It's from Walmart. It's
China
like
wood.
1998, baby.
I'm afraid it's gonna fall over.
It might. If it does, it'll be fun.
It'll be on Adam.
Yeah.
It's gonna all come on me. I'm gonna have first form and Duncan all over my lap.
So that's good.
So today we're going to be interviewing Colton Anderson, brother from another mother.
Like your son.
It's more realistic that way.
I guess so. I mean, it could be more of an accident.
That's fair.
That's 10
fair.
years. 11
10?
years. 11 years. Well, I'm 41. I guess you're 12.
Yeah, 12 years. Yeah, that can be an
I
accident.
mean, you could have been an accident.
Yeah, Mom and Dad got busy.
So, I mean, I guess for me to real quick talk about just how I met Colton, obviously it was through church. And then just the kind of like even with Vince, just the whole idea of just his self-motivating to just be better, get better, very, competitive, like to win. Sports obviously was a big part of your life. Went to the same, we all went to the same high school, and just having that little bit of that background, and then just, of course, just all the things you've been able to do for, like, just me personally with kind of the things you've been able to, like, teach me, just through your ministry of how you looked at certain avenues of life, things that, your maturity level is probably, at times,
More than ours.
More than ours.
I don't know.
But then there's also time that's like, man, he's still a kid.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's a good balance.
Yep.
But yeah, so I've always really appreciated everything that you've ever done for me and our family. Like, it's just always been a huge blessing to always kind of have you around, gravitating, and just being kind of a positive influence. So I appreciate you.
It's cool. I appreciate you. And I try to model my fashion after you.
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I honestly through the church is how I met Colton too.
Oh yeah, I guess.
But
it
it
was
was
working there.
Yeah, I was at the Y when the church was there.
That's right.
When you guys first started, and that whole setup. The one thing that always sticks out about Colton is his energy level. You're always at like and between 8 and 10. It seems like he's always just running that red line just all the time. So, and then it's contagious because when you come in and 5 o'clock in the morning and it's just kind of quiet and everything else, and he walks in, hey, and it kind of everybody like jumps up and
it's a light
cranks,
switch.
And then
it's a light switch.
Yeah,
I don't like
and
that.
everything. So that's always a plus. I mean, because even like on our down days, if he's around, just automatically you're just like, you're built up a little bit more and whatnot. But then, really getting, once you open the gym, I remember showing up at your grand opening.
Yep.
Because I had never been in.
I thought you were scouting.
Oh, no.
A Weiss and a spy.
Cold Patriots.
But I just went to go check it out and support because I just, see what it's all about. Never know what might have happened. And then, that fateful October day when I came back in ever since then, like I said, we've been almost every day, 5 o'clock. And
like I said, I remember being like, when do you train? You're like, I'm going to come in the morning. I'm like, well, we got a 5 a.m. crew. And with no expectation. Because you've seen it now.
Yeah.
Like the people that come in for a day or a week.
Yep.
So.
Well, and even to like that point, and like for some of the listeners and even some of the ones that, go to the gym, it's like, look what you two have just built and how close you guys relationally have gotten together because of the consistency of being there, and like you guys can literally count on each other to at least know there's always going to be two.
And unless there's a kid involved, and then it's just,
exactly. I mean,
obviously it was just me for a really dark period.
Yeah, he was going through it.
I couldn't have him or Cody because they both had kids that coming, and then you could never count on Blake. So
Shout out Blake.
Yeah, there you are, Blake.
He came rolling in at 6 a.m.
As I'm leaving.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, just the idea of like if you're looking for a community of people. One of the best places for in a positive way is probably trying to find a good gym.
Yeah,
for sure. Perfect example is the kid this morning.
Yeah.
He comes in, he gives it his all.
Yeah,
and not one time are we like, oh, here, you can't lift with us because you're not lifting the same weight. We're like, no, man.
Switch the weights.
Yeah, here, switch it up.
Yeah.
We're pushing him, go. And that's the best thing about the gym is that you can feel uncomfortable, but if you just kind of break out of your shell a little bit, we're going to help. Like, we're not here to judge you or anything like that. Like, we're going to help you get better in every way.
Yeah,
and like to his point, like if he doesn't always know what he's doing.
Yeah.
But it speaks about if someone's willing to show up at 5 and you're 16 years old, the kid is like, we'll go out of our way to help you because you showed up at 5. Like
you get so far ahead.
You get the help if you show up at 5. Now if you come rolling in at 3 and you don't know what you're doing, like I'll help you to a point. But if you show up and you're dedicated at 5 to come in and be like, I'm here because I want to get better, then we're gonna, it's different. There's a level of commitment.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just that random act of kindness.
Yeah.
When you open up, like you said, break your shell and open yourself up to somebody, like that goes a long way for somebody who might not really know exactly what's going on or how to do things. That's good.
For sure.
Well, it's funny because in church Sunday, you talked about how you don't like having the hard conversations.
Oh, yeah.
But you're the one that out of any of us probably is the best at having those hard conversations with people.
Yeah, I think goes back to like it's a skill, like I guess going back to church, like to have those hard conversations with truth, but then with some grace, like to have hard conversations. And then with my job, like you get put in those more often, so then you get practice at like
you're
hard conversations.
I think like something happened is like you naturally because it is hard. Like you really have to. It takes a lot of maturity and to understand. Okay, I probably should count to 30 before I react instead of reacting and then like, oh man, I can't take that back.
We won't
I
get
think a
into
lot of
it,
that is-
but yesterday I talked to Vince this morning. We can talk off the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was counting to 60.
Yesterday?
Oh, dude,
Yeah,
you'll
comment?
No.
Oh, you saw
Did
it?
you see it?
Because we were on our way down there,
Yeah.
and then Kelsey showed me, and I just looked at it, and I probably stared at it for I probably should have looked at the road, but I was just looking at
Safety
it.
first, kids.
Yeah, and I'm because I was debating, and then I actually refreshed it, and it popped off.
Yeah.
So it must have got taken
I
down.
took the high road. I deleted it and moved on.
So back to what we were talking, you think it's generational the way we handle hard conversations compared to the way he handles hard conversations?
No,
In what way?
I don't know. I just think there's
Where's your mind with it?
Just different time that we grew up, and those hard conversations were always just kind of we never had them. Yeah, you just kind of you held on to it, you settled it, and then you moved on. Where nowadays it's more, well, I'm gonna speak my feelings, which is great. Everybody needs to be able to get it out, but I can tell you personally, for the longest time, I just took everything and I held it all in.
Yeah.
Instead of having the conversation or whatnot.
I know I'm the same way, and I probably should have had more of a conversation because then it became that small thing that exploded, and then everything came out.
Yes.
Instead of just the
one thing.
Just knocking something out real quick 6 weeks ago gets brought up over something minute.
Yeah.
And then it's never really been a good outcome.
Yeah. Generational, I think, to a point, the empathy that my generation, I guess, probably has, or the feelings side that Vince was saying more. But I think for me, and we can kind of get into it when we talk about my background, but I had people that had hard conversations with me. And so I saw the value in that. And so that doesn't, I see the value, if there's a hard conversation now, depending on how they respond, I'm more willing to be I'm going to have this because people had those with me, and I took it and accepted those and changed, and so I kind of put it on the other person. If I have this hard conversation with you and you hate me because of it or whatever, cool.
Yeah.
I was trying to look.
Yeah.
I knew where my heart was in it, and so hopefully it makes them better. But they're still hard to have.
And that's honestly why it's important to have them, because it may not be tomorrow. But I know probably, let's say, with Elizabeth, I know at 20 she's probably going to be thank you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be probably somewhere down the road.
Yep.
But that thankfulness of you having that conversation is going to be, beneficial for her. And I think, you talked about your dad, and just that, and my parents being they didn't have those conversations with me either. So I didn't know how to handle them. Whereas you, like you said, had a chance to be able to embark on some of those conversations with somebody, and so you were able to whether you knew it then or not, you knew that later this was actually going to benefit you, down the road.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna get to the questions now.
Where do
Just
we go
Colton.
from here?
Yeah. Well, we're gonna get on your youth.
All right. Yeah.
I obviously know where you grew up at.
Yeah.
Saw the house.
Yeah. So grew up here in Mattoon. Went to St. John's, the Lutheran school here until 8th grade. And I would say that phase of my life, even through high school, I was the funny fat kid. I was always heavy. Weight was always, made fun of in school and carried that with me. But it was quick to if you made a joke about it, then it was no longer something that somebody could make fun of because you were making fun of it. So a lot of Chris Farley impressions, a lot of fat bastard impressions, I'm dead sexy, just all the time. And then through high school, football was always my love. I remember I slept with a football, from the time I was 6, go to Walden's bookstore in the mall, and I'm 8 years old and I'm getting coaching books and in the backyard, trying to work on my stance and stuff.
And this is all just you.
This was just me just loving football. This is the only
okay.
And I wasn't great because I didn't really have a work ethic.
Okay.
At that time, so through JFL, middle school, work ethic was there, but hated running, hated everything about the conditioning days, tried to find ways to get out of it, go to the bathroom and poop during sprints, all the typical lineman stuff. Through high school, like typical jock, like that kind of thing. Like, but I was pretty, like I had a close circle even in high school. Like I wasn't a partier. I wasn't popular. I kind of wore like the get made fun of. I had the stereotype as a church kid because my parents were my youth leaders and I was involved in church, but I wasn't really a church kid. Like I wasn't going around being like, telling people about Jesus every day. Like I was almost like annoyed by it at times because it was like what was put on me. And so I had a conviction like not to drink, not to do drugs, but then in high school, like a girl's interested in you, you're like, oh, well, that's where I'm going to find this confidence. Because even though I'm heavy, I always had a girlfriend. So that was kind of where my focus lied, was like football and then like having a girlfriend. But through high school, like work-wise, like I always found ways to, and I don't know what, I guess it's something God put in me. I think it was in my dad. My dad was in finances and like financial management, and so he had freedom in his schedule to always be at my stuff, like and take vacations and do those things. So I saw that freedom that he had as like running his own business, and so that's where I always thought I was going to go. My grandpa did it, my dad did it, financial management. And so that was the path through high school, like business classes. I was in the entrepreneurship class here in Mattoon. Class E. The original class.
There you go.
And so,
OG.
Yep. So through that, like always had this like business mindset. Like here's a good story. So there was a yearbook class, and I like signed up for yearbook, and I did not want to do yearbook, but it was the last class of the day, and I went to the teacher. And I was like, hey, like, I'll be your ad manager. Like, I'll get all the ads for the yearbook. So, because they used to have, like, the girls that would take pictures and work on the yearbook call one business a day to try to get these ads to pay for the yearbook. So I would go to class, and I'd be like, I'm going to go out and get ads. And so she was like, I got a pass, so I got to leave every day at, like, 1 o'clock to go out and sell ads. So I would go home, and I had a call list, and I would sit and play Madden while I called businesses and had them email their stuff and send the check to the school.
Oh my gosh.
So I never went anywhere.
Wow.
Like I just played the system. I was like, I'm gonna go sell ads. I didn't tell her where I was going. She assumed I was going to businesses.
There was no stipulation on how you got the money, right?
So I was like, just send the check to Mattoon High School and send your PDF of your logo to like yearbook at mcusd.com, and so they would I just send it to I make all the secretaries do the work, and I would be so like those were kind of the things that like I found ways to like have some freedom, and saw like the side that like if you run things and work things a certain way, you can experience that. But through high school, like I was a weight room skipper, like I would, because I was working, or I'd come up like I could have moved my schedule around, but I didn't want to go do sprints and box jumps and stuff because I wanted to go home and eat Oreos and go out.
What job did you have?
So through high school, I worked. Through Class E, I mowed lawns all summer, did landscaping, and then I would work a sweet gig. I was the custodian at St. John's, so I got that job. So I would go in. It was basically any hours I wanted. I had to get 4 hours a night cleaning like all the classrooms each day, but the school ended at 3, so I could go between 3 and 6 a.m. the next day. So I would go in high school. I was usually going like 9 to 1, or like or if I went to bed, I'd get up early and go do it. So that was like really nice hours. But then I would use that to like, I gotta go clean, and then I go clean at like 3:30 to 7:30 and get done. So that was kind of the through high school, like ran that business and the lawn care stuff, and then cleaned and all that good stuff. Okay. Yeah.
So would you say then that that's the beginning of your entrepreneurial outlook, or because it sounds like, I mean, you took those, you saw what your dad did and saw the freedom he had running his business, and then you were like, oh, well, I can do that if I do this. Now, it might not have been the best use of time when you're playing Madden, but you took that spirit and kind of made it your own.
Yeah, and I think all of it was like this idea that I was gonna run like my own finance stuff, like and have those things. And so, and even from like really early, like I would like we had a playhouse in our backyard, and like me and my neighbor like filled it with books from Goodwill, and then we would charge it like local kids like $1 to come take books from the library.
You've been hustling since day one.
Man,
or like go down the street to a rummage sale and be like, can I put my stuff in this rummage sale? And then I would go grab like a box and put stuff in the rummage sale. And it was all just to get money to then looking back on, man, I wish I would have saved. But it was just so I always had money to go buy my girlfriend flowers or go out to dinner.
But still,
or go to a
that's
movie.
creative.
Yeah. It was, yeah.
Like you were eBay.
Yeah, kind of.
Gary V before Gary V.
Yeah.
I was hustling
No
at like
kidding.
7. And I don't know what, that was just in me. Like that that spirit, I guess.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So that was through high school.
But then academically,
I was good. I mean,
you're decent.
yeah,
Like,
A's and B's.
okay.
I think I dropped dual credit trigonometry senior year because I had a D and I needed to retake tests.
Same thing.
And I was like, I can't. So then dropped the dual credit.
Yeah.
Then they let me retake the test. So A's and B's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we've transitioned from like your youth to high school. I mean, not really an honorary kid though. I mean, just typical boy stuff.
Yep.
I mean, nothing that we.
Yeah.
So now, because you went 4 years, Concordia, up north.
Mm-hmm.
So what possessed you to go there? What made you decide that football was going to be a continuation?
Yeah. So I was not going to go to Concordia. Like I was against it because it was the college that at the Lutheran school and church that was always talked about. Like Concordia, like they would come to all the pep rallies and like try to recruit kids like about how great this campus is. And they were at all the conferences and things. And I was like, I'm not going to another Lutheran school. Like I spent through 8th grade there. I wanted this freedom was the thought. And so I was going to go to Florida State. Like that was where I was going to go. I was going to go to Florida State. I was going to do finance law. I was going to do all this stuff. Went and visited Florida State. Fell in love with it. Like I was like, this place is awesome.
Hard not to.
Yeah. I mean, it was from here to go to that campus was like, this is insane. Then there were some like I wasn't great at football, but I was decent, and I had size. Like you get a 300-pound kid, that's nice to have on D line. And so had a couple D3 things, and I was like, I don't really like. I loved football, so I was like gonna explore those. And my mom was like, just go visit, because I had a letter from Concordia, and I went up there, and I remember the drive like just ready to get downtown. Like we're gonna go to the visit, then we're gonna go downtown. And man, like talk about a God thing. I loved it.
Okay.
Like everything I thought that the school was gonna be was nothing like I was like, this is gonna be like a church school, like, and got plugged in. Like the football coaches took me out to lunch. Like I remember leaving there and I was like, yep, that's where I'm going. And super excited. And so made that decision in like right after the season, senior year, I think.
Okay.
And so like out of that class, we were pretty good. There was like 6 of us that went on and played in college.
Because you graduated in
13. So that was our first playoff appearance in like 9 years. Yeah. And so it was 10 years. Okay. And so all D3 and D2 guys. The part that, and we'll get to this, that I'm the most proud of is I'm the only one that played 4 years out of those 6. And we'll kind of get into that, but yeah, that was the biggest thing for me. So go to Concordia. I remember getting dropped off and like terrified. Like I was so scared.
It's your first time
away
on your own, really, and
the unknown known.
So a little different than like a normal college drop off. Like we get there, and I'm coming from like Mattoon football, and the thing I say about like college football, being around like Eastern's program and these things now that I've got to experience life, is that yes, D3 and D1, there's a huge difference in size and speed, but the amount of like work that you put in is the same.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't change. I mean, there's coaches that are coaching for their jobs, because you still have to win, because it still brings in a ton of money to the schools. And so, like, get there, and it's like, because I'm getting dropped off for camp. And so, like, they bring the parents in, they, like, do this nice little, like, brunch, and then it's like, get your equipment, go here, take your concussion test, do this. Okay, you eat, like, dinner with your parents, go out, and then you say bye, and you go to meetings. So I remember, like, I'm, like, getting goosebumps and, like, kind of feeling sick. Because I remember going to dinner. And, like, feeling like I was going to puke. And so then you go straight into this meeting hall of, like, 90 people. And it's, like, seniors down to the new incoming freshmen. And they just start. They're like, this is your playbook. This is your position. We have lift at 6 a.m. Like, and then you go to your room. And you're with a roommate that you've never met before. And you're like, and you both are like, oh crap.
Oh, so you're both new. They don't give anybody else.
Nope. You're living with another. Yep. You're living with another dude who's new, and you're both. The first night we just laid awake and we were like, what are we doing? And so that was the start. Like I remember freshman year, like no fresh. There was like 2 or 3 freshmen that traveled, but most of the time, freshmen. Yeah. Like you are a dummy for
your body
for 12 weeks. Yeah. You get to go and just get beat up on. And I remember the first day of pads that you get in lines for one-on-ones, and this is still camp, so everybody's together. You're not split into practice squad or anything like that. And so it just happened to fall that on one-on-ones, I played guard and tackle in high school, so I was moved to center in college. And so I'm on the O-line, and Marcus Frazier is a 5th-year senior, 6'4", like 260, yoked out. It looks like something like
a DJ Metcalf?
Like DeMarcus Ware.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And they're like, next. And I like get up there and I get my stance, snap the ball. I don't know where the ball went. Like it probably went like to the 50, it probably went like 40 feet over the
Justin Tucker field goal.
Yeah, dude. And I got lit up and I was like, I do not belong here. And I was like, oh man. So I go to the back of the line and my roommate was behind me and he's like, dude. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the start of like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like I'm going to do this. And so through college, like the academic side was fine. Like business management, went to class, did all that. But focusing on football, like sophomore year, come back, you know the system, you know the drill, like you got friends, you all these things. And so sophomore year, felt more confident, got stronger.
Same roommate?
No. So me and my roommate were brothers first semester, and then second semester it was like still brothers, but like that other side of it. Like every day we would just fight. And I'm talking like
really
anything outside of like punching each other in the face. Like we broke futons. We would just walk in and like look at each other and just throw down.
Really?
And now we're tight. Like it was just like having someone that you lived in their space. You just at some point you were gonna butt heads.
Because it's still dorm life, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay. Well, and you still gotta. I mean, you have to acclimate to each other.
Yeah.
So you didn't like that first semester. You were trying to figure each other out, and figure out what ticks they had, and what you had, and then finally that second semester, you're like, okay, look, dude, put the dishes in the sink.
Exactly.
Clean them.
Exactly. And I remember like the thing that would always set us off is he had his way of doing things and I had my way, and he would be like, just do it the right way, and that would always just cause a fight because he would tell me to just
because his right way was his right way, and you're
and so he'd say do it the right way, and I'd be like, oh, okay, we're dropping gloves, like we're going. And so sophomore year was really good. Like I would say sophomore year was one of like my favorite years because all my buddies like that stood up in my wedding, and we all lived on the same floor. So it was awesome every day. Like, even with, like, me and my roommate, there were good moments, but there were just, like, those moments where, like, you had to get it out. And then, like, boys, after you were done, you were good. And then you turn on the Xbox, and it's all good.
Now.
And, so that year, go through football, pay the like, I'm no longer on practice squad. I'm traveling, but, like, I'm like, second, third string center. And, that was the year that they brought in Coach Jacoby. So our O-line coach went and took a head coaching job, and they bring in Joe Jacoby, the former Washington Redskins. Yep. Hog. And he was super influential in like my growth as a football player. And so sophomore year was like all about, I knew I didn't have like the size because I'm 5'10", and like I was like 275 at this time. I'd lost a little bit when I got to school. I was like 285 freshman year, like eating and all that stuff. Missed a pivotal part here. So freshman year ends and I'm done, and so you have your end of the year meetings. And I go into Coach Ori's office, who's this old dude from Iron Mountain, Michigan. He played on the Northern Michigan National Championship team, and he was a running back, and he is like a hard man. And I go into his office, and we're breaking for Thanksgiving. I haven't been home all since August, and so we're getting ready to go home for Thanksgiving break. And you go to your end-of-year meetings, and they tell you like what you need to work on, all that stuff, give you the off-season workout, things to do before you come back for spring ball. And he has a scale in his office, and he has me step on the scale, and I'm like 303. I'm like, all right. And it's a hard conversations. He's like, you like that number? I'm like, I mean, no, like where, like if you think I need to be less, like I'll do it.
At this point, you probably never been told any other way.
Yeah. And so he's like, I think you'd be better if you were lighter, but I'm more concerned that you're just going to die at 30. So, and I was like, geez. I was like, all right, so.
It's because you would probably, I mean, as far as your overall stature, were you just more bigger than strong?
Yeah, and I mean, I could move weight, but that was because I was carrying around 300 pounds.
Right.
So I could bench 315 and squat 4 something, like, just because I was big. And so he's like, yeah, let's get to work on that. And he was good. And so I was like, okay. So I took that, go home for Thanksgiving, like, got this plan, right, that, like, I'm going to lose weight. Well, after Thanksgiving. So we leave that meeting was on a Tuesday. I go home Wednesday. I'm home through the weekend. We come back to school Tuesday. And I'm on campus, and, like, football's done.
Here's what I found.
Football's just done for whatever. And I get a call, and it's Coach Ori. And he's like, hey, run to my office real quick. Okay. Get to his office. I step on the skis, like, step on the scale. I was like, what? I was like, no. And I think I gained like 5 pounds, so I'm like 308 or something like that. And he's like, like, you keep gaining 5 pounds a week, like, oh yeah, like, he's like, you want to die? And I was just like, geez, dude, like, I just went home. Like, I haven't been home, like, give me a month. And I just remember leaving that and being like, what in the world? Like, man. And I started training, like, tried to eat, like, better. But even, like, when you're that big, you can just cut out, like, the half of a pizza and lose weight. Yeah, right. So sophomore year, I come back to camp, like, 275. And he was good with that. Like, they saw some, I was committed. Right. But I didn't want to, like, lose. So I was faster. I was in it. And then going back to Coach Jacoby, like, sophomore year, I went all, like, I'm just going to learn how to be the best, like, mentally. Like, I'm going to know the playbook. I'm going to know how to get myself in position and do everything right so that I'm in the best spot. And so then that was a good year. Saw some playing time, a little bit, just injuries and things. And then junior year started, like, every game. Like, not like 9 games out of 10. But they recruited somebody. This kid, JR from Florida. Shout out JR. I love him. But he was your stereotypical college center. 6'3", 280, like, could move, big. And I was like, well, this kid's going to take my spot. And I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, and so that was when I was like, I have to play my senior year. Like, I have to play, like, somewhere. I'm not going to do this for 4 years and not see the field. So that meeting in November, I was up front with him. I'm like, whatever I need to do. I was like, I'll go to defensive tackle. Like, I'll get to 240. Like, I'll be fast. Like, our defense was very about, like, speed. And so I was like, whatever I need to do. So he's like, well, let's just, like, work on that and see what you think, and then we'll address in spring ball. So I just started, like, searching stuff, and I found Corey Gregory, and I found anabolic fasting. I found his training, and just went all in. I remember going home at Christmas and eating, like, chicken breast and green beans, and I was like, this is all I'm going to do. And I would get up and run in the morning. Like, I was all in. and come back for spring ball, and I'm like 242, and so then by the end of spring ball, I'm like 237, and we took a trip to the spring break trip for football guys. We would go and serve at this camp in Wisconsin, and it was awesome because you'd go work all day, and they'd feed you, and then you'd have all night on this camp to go do whatever you wanted. So we polar plunge and play in the rec center, and it was just awesome. And the coaches came. Well, they like split us up on the last day, and everyone hated Coach Ori. Like, and I didn't hate him. Like, I never had this ill feeling toward him, even after everything he'd said to me, and he was kind of old. He was super old school. Like, I had Johnson and Kimbrough, so I wasn't like I knew the deal. And they're splitting us up on the last day, and they're like, "Who wants to go cut wood?" And like nobody raises their hand. I'm like, "I'll go cut wood." Coach Rory's like, "I'll go cut wood." I'm like, "All right." So it was just me and him. And I remember getting out there, and there was a log splitter, and you just had to keep filling it. And there was a shed full of like logs. And I was in my mind, I'd been working out like hard. I was like like I said, like around 230 now. I was like, I'm gonna push this old dude, and we about broke each other. Like we just went. Like it was awesome. Right after lunch, and neither of us stopped, and we were gonna see who would break first. And that was the first taste of like, for me, of like getting pushed outside of myself, because I probably
went to a whole different level.
I was competitive, and I saw when it flipped in him a little bit. And so we're supposed to be back at like the mess hall at like 5. Well, we don't even have our phone. Like we don't even know what time. We're just going. Yeah. And like a guy comes pulling up in a 4-wheeler, and he's like, "Are you guys coming?" We're like, "Yeah, all right." So we get in a 4-wheeler, we get back, everyone's done eating. It's like 6 o'clock, and all the guys like look at me like, "What did you do? Like what happened?" And I'm like, "That was awesome." Like we talked like while we were working. Like I found out about his life. Like he shared, and so like had a whole new respect for him. And so we didn't even talk. Like the rule was you weren't going to talk football at all on the trip. Okay. It was just life and like building relationships. So then after that, like football's done pretty much after that. Spring ball's over, and I go home for the summer. And I think I ended that year. I was like 225 by the time I left campus. And I went home and I was like, that was the hardest summer I've ever worked. I was working out at 5 a.m, working at St. John's, mowing yards, and I would go do CrossFit at night. And then I would go home and I would eat, and then I would go run. And I was like, I'm going to be in the best shape of my life. And like I said, something in me had just flipped that year, and I was obsessed. And in that, go back in August, and I go in for like the combine testing, like where they check all your body measurements and stuff. I'm 194, and the coaches are like, "What are we going to do with you?" And I remember we had to run a conditioning test, and it was linemen, and then backers, and then like DBs and wide receivers. And this is the only time in my life I would have been able to do this, because I can't do this now. I was like, they call out the linemen, they call all the names, and I don't step up. Now, I do not know what made me do this. And I'm still a lineman. Like, they still have me the first 3 days with line. But this is for the conditioning test on day 1. They call backers. I just hang out at the back, because I knew. Because I'd done the conditioning all summer to get ready for it. And then they call wide receivers and DBs. And everyone's just looking at me. And I step up to the line. I made all 20 times as a DB and wide receiver.
No kidding?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was like, screw all of you.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm making a statement.
Yeah.
And so that was like, I was like, no matter what happens this year, that was awesome. So I'm with the linemen for 3 days because I know the system. So they put me down with them. And that was Marcus Frazier freshman year for 3 days straight.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I'd be fine because I was strong.
Right.
I was fat. Like, but there's a difference between a 300-pound guy and a 194 guy. Right. And I felt it every day for 3 days. And went into his office on day 3, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't know where I can play. Like, I know I don't know the other positions, but wherever you need me, like, I'm good. So they moved me to linebacker, and I knew I didn't know it. Like, we had 3 good linebackers, but that got me on every special teams. Yeah. That got me on everything. So got to play. Like, I was the first one down on kickoff. Like, every time. Like I just took that to a whole new level. I was like, I'm going to be the wedge buster. I'm going to be the guy that,
blow everything up.
Yeah. And then week 5, we're in a drill in practice, and just tackling drill, and just one of those freak things, get rolled up on and just snap my ankle. And that sucked.
So that pretty much ended your entire senior year?
Yeah, so they thought I'd had issues with ankle sprains and stuff before, so the trainers knew that like I was trying to finish the year. So they did the x-ray, came back inconclusive. They're like, let's give it a week and try to get the swelling down. So they tried to do all the stuff to get swelling out. Now it's week 6. They're like, we're going to send you for an MRI. I go for the MRI. I come back that day. I'm like, I just didn't have any, I felt like my Achilles was going to tear because my ankle was so tight. Like I couldn't, I had no flexion. And so I went to the field and I'm like stomping like my foot trying to get flexion. And I was like, if my Achilles tears, then it's done. But if I can just get this to I felt like I just needed it to pop and then it would be fine. And so I remember being out there, I was by myself. It was like an hour before practice. I remember being almost in tears because I'm just trying to get this thing to go, trying to get in a stance, trying to push off. And then the trainers kept running out and they're like, the MRI came back. You got to get off that. You're putting you in a boot. I had cracked, I don't know the name of it, but there's a ball that your ankle rolls on in the inside. And I basically had split that. And so then schedule surgery, all this stuff. And so that was kind of the end of football.
So where does that put you mentally, knowing that you worked all this time up and then to basically lose it to an injury, a freak injury at that?
Yeah, so that's where, through that weight loss, the roommate that I had junior and senior year gets kicked off of campus for academics. All of my buddies that I was close with had all graduated. Of course, I was friends with all the older guys. That started young. Now you guys are here. And so it was really lonely because I wasn't living the life. I wasn't going out with all the guys. I was eating super clean. So I wasn't I was always scared of going out and eating bad. I was training all the time. I would come home and sleep. I would go work at a gym in Chicago, and I would work night shifts on the weekends after games. So I was just kind of done with all, I was so focused on that other stuff. So through that, it was really lonely. I remember, as much as I loved football and all the training, I was really kind of depressed.
Yeah.
And so started going to church, and that is really when, my faith took off. It had always been my mom and my dad's faith that I'd kind of clung to, or my path. I had great pastors growing up that I was I like what they say, and they're great mentors.
So is this the moment?
That's kind of the moment. Before then, leading up to that, that summer and that back on campus through football, I was very much seeking the Lord. I was very much this is my relationship with God, journaling, reading scripture, all that stuff. And so I remember laying in the hospital bed, and I wasn't upset. I knew that there was a plan, and I knew that okay, football's over, but God's going to use this. And so that's what I just was I'm just going to keep pursuing that. And still around the team and did all that stuff, hype man, that's, that was where that came from. And so I was at peace with that. It was hard because I knew I lost 5 weeks and I knew there was nothing after that. But I was at peace with it because I was in a really good place, with God at the time. And so, that was kind of the end of that journey, in college.
Okay. I know because you mentioned something about the Polish guys.
Oh yeah. So that was So I was going to free church, and like I said in the sermon Sunday, I went and signed up for a small group. There was nobody working the table. The lady next to me was like, oh, I don't know where he is. He went to the bathroom. So I'm like, it was called an Iron Man Bible study, and I signed up for it. I'm like, this is gonna be awesome. Go to the study on Thursday night. I get out of practice, go to this study, and it was all Polish dudes that were in their 50s.
And older guys again.
Yeah, again. And I'm the youngest by 25 years. And they were really influential in that because they were there through the whole ankle thing and giving me wisdom, and I was staying in that. And they were just really good at giving me advice like that they had wished they had done differently, and how their walk with God had wavered, or the struggles and the things that they went through to get to where they were at 50.
Right.
And we're like, these are the things that we wish we would have done when we were your age, and how we would have been in church and doing these things. And so they spoke a lot into my life, and they were all, so that was really good, and something that, even though it wasn't a bunch of fit dudes doing an Ironman study, it definitely did sharpen me spiritually.
Yeah.
So as much as I was looking for guys that were like gonna like go work out with me and that kind of stuff, these guys, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. They definitely sharpened my sword in that way.
No, that's good, because that's, I mean, you know, with this podcast we're even doing, it's the same thing. I mean, that's what we're trying to do for others, you know. And so, so now, I know we're probably getting close here on wrapping up some time here, but when did you decide to do the internship? When did you decide to pack it up?
Yeah.
You kind of hoboed it.
Yeah.
And just said, I'm doing it.
Yeah. Gosh, man, my life was wild for a few years. So my junior year of college, I did an internship with Northwestern Mutual, because I'm still thinking like I'm gonna go that finance route. And it was out of Champaign. It was selling life insurance and doing like getting clients. And so would drive up to Champaign and basically sit in a cubicle, make calls, set appointments, go sell life insurance, which is important. Like I think I still have that conviction that that's an important thing. But and so I believed in the product, and I was good at it. Like I made top 5 in Illinois, got to go on this big trip down south, like to this guy's house, got to see like what that
Could look like.
business can look like the money, like jet skis and Lake Egypt and all this stuff. Got to go to like Madison, Wisconsin to this annual meeting, like got the job offer, like all this stuff. And I just remember being like, I don't know. And well, then my dad was working for a different company, and they heard all this stuff, and they were like, we're not going to let him go there.
Right.
So they gave me an internship going into my senior year that I was studying for my Series 7, which is like securities exchange, being able to sell and buy and sell stocks and trade and all that stuff. So I studied for that, and through that, like I was like, this is not what I want to do. And they were super gracious when I was like, I can't, like I don't want to do this.
So how did mom and dad deal with that decision?
They were always really good. Like my mom was always supportive of all my crazy things, and my dad was just always just like, whatever, dude. Like he's like, I don't want to touch it. But that was, they didn't understand it. Because this is like the time now where like when I was in that internship during that summer where I went from like 225 to 194. Okay. I was doing all that. So I was like completely obsessed with getting ready for football.
Yep.
And so then my senior year I go in and I'm like, I'm not going to change my major. So I just started taking a bunch of electives for health and fitness and nutrition and exercise science and that stuff, and continued to follow Corey. And that March of my senior year, we go to the Arnold for the first time, me and my buddy Zach, and Corey's doing a live podcast. And so we go to that live podcast and I talk with him for the first time. And me and Zach are now talking about like buying a gym and like trying to do that. So this is after the ankle. Okay. Now I'm like, we're looking at like, what does it look like when we graduate? Zach had graduated the year before, but was living in Chicago.
Adulthood.
Yeah. And we're like, what are we going to do? And so we looked at the weight station in Mattoon and we're like, we can live there. We're like, we'll make the upstairs like an apartment.
Yeah.
And we have no money. Like we have student loans.
Yeah.
Like we have no money. And so that was not going to be like a thing. And so at the time, Corey had just started Max Effort, and there were some guys that were with him, Zach Hummel out of Indianapolis, and Iron Valley Barbell, and then Corey. Well, my buddy Zach, like, really was drawn to Zach Hummel and, like, the Iron Valley stuff. And so Corey was just telling us, like, we need to learn more. And that's pretty much all he elaborated on. So Zach and I would go to Indy to train because it was closer to Chicago than going to, like, to Columbus. And so we're going there and training, and Hummel offers my Zach and me like an internship. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't vibe with that. They were very wild. Okay. And that was not where I was at in life. Like my faith and my convictions, like I was not on the wild train. And so I was like, well, I need to go learn from the guy that like
told you
but
how to learn.
it told me everything.
Yeah.
So I just started messaging him on Twitter. Like, it was at Corey G Fitness. I messaged him every Monday for 16 weeks. Like, it was crazy. Like, I started even before he told me. Like, I was just messaging for like, well, I guess it would have been like 12 weeks. It was like 3 months. March, April, May. Anyway, we have the timeline wrong. It's been a few years. But one of the messages he finally responds to, and he's like, it was an email address, jacob@maxeverettmuscle.com. So I emailed Jacob, and I'm like, are you taking interns? Like, I'd love to come intern for you. He's like, we are taking 2 summer interns. If you can start May 9th. And I was like, I'll be there. And I have no idea. I was driving home for the weekend when I get this message. And I post on Facebook. Like, I haven't even really talked to my parents yet. Like, I'm like, is anybody got any, like, sublease or know someone I can stay with in the Columbus area? I graduate May 8th. So my parents come up for graduation May 8th. I graduate, go to dinner, and then drive straight home. And then I drive home, and I got the Prius, and I'm like loaded up with 1 pot, like 1 pan, 1 fork, 1 spoon, 1 like a pillow, an air mattress. Because I started, again, power of social media. I started messaging people from Corey's gym about a place to stay that I don't know them. I'm just messaging them like, I got this internship with Max, so at least there's a connection that they know I'm there. Yeah. And a guy was like, I just got an apartment. It's a 1-bedroom, but you can sleep on the living room for like $200 a month. I'm like, done. So never met the dude. My mom talks about how she was like terrified. Oh, man. Like, she's like, where is, like, I can see that. So left that morning. It was a Sunday. Left, get to Alex's house. And I remember I wasn't scared like I was with football. Like, I was like, this is going to be okay. Because I had that confidence. Like, that like, I was 285 and not feeling confident. Now I had this confidence that I was going to be able to hang. And so, worked at Max for 3 months. Like, thought I was going to be there forever. And talked to Corey about, like, what that looked like. Can I get a job? Like, I'm going to have to start paying student loans here. And he was just like, man, like, I don't think you want to be just packing sacks and working in a warehouse. He's like, if you want to, like, we can extend the internship and we'll be hiring in a few months if you want to continue to work that and make it work until then.
So he's seen something.
Exactly. But he was just like, I don't think you want to be stuck in a warehouse. And I was just like, devastated. Yeah. I was like, what in the world? And so then that turns into looking for jobs. And had a connection with a school down in Florida. And so went there and did strength and conditioning and coached football there. And that was awesome. Yeah. But I still didn't feel like I was where I was supposed to be. Like, I was still very, again, very lonely. Like, I didn't know anybody. Yeah. I mean, I think, like, I had family there. I had family there, but that's different. Like, family, they've got their lives. Right. And so I moved to Florida, was coaching football, was subbing in the school. Always got sent to the principal's office because teachers, they had a dress code. And I was a teacher, but teachers would, like, send me to the office, and I'd be like, I'm a sub. And they'd be like, oh, sorry, we thought you were a student. So I was still very young. Like, this is before facial hair. Like, this is all. Like, I'd be in the teacher's lounge making coffee, and they'd be like, what are you doing in here? And I'd be like, hey, sorry. Like, I'm in, Mr. Maddox's class today. They're like, oh, okay. But that was cool. Like, again, I wasn't making a ton of money doing that. I got a coaching stipend. I was getting money from the school, but I knew I needed, like, some more money. So I went to a job fair in Fort Myers and found a radio station that was hiring. And so I became like the little hype guy at car dealerships, and it's all falling into all coming together. So I'd be out there like, 101.3 Gator Country. Like, we're giving away tickets to the Everglades game tonight. Like, come on up, spin the wheel. Like, man. Like, and then so that was at like these things, but then that job entailed like going to this place called the Ranch, which was a concert hall, and working security. And so, again, like, I'm fairly fit, and so they always booked me for security. And so I got to, like, again. Close? Oh, yeah. And, like, I got to meet, like, Randy Hauser, Carly Pierce, John Party, like, all these guys. Like, I'd work their green room and then ask them, like, what they needed and that kind of stuff, and then go work security at the front. So this opened my eyes to, like, the party scene, because I would obviously be sober, you know what I mean? Yeah, and I had these convictions, and I was solid in my faith. And so just, it always blew my mind. Because I'm single too, like, through all this. And I'm praying at that point, like, God would, like, reveal to me if I'm just supposed to be single. Because I was like, how do I even meet a girl? Like, I get up at 4, I go to work, like, where does it even happen? And I don't want to meet the girls that were at the ranch that were coming up to me being like, I mean, they were, like, they'd be like, all they want to do is get in the green room.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm not an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, the second I get you, like, it's not about me.
Right.
What's behind door number 1 here?
Yeah, I'm like, duh. Like, I'm not an idiot. Like, I'm not going to let you back here. But then, and then another crazy story. I'm down there, and football season gets cut short because Irma comes rolling through.
Oh, yeah.
And, like I said, I was living down there in the garage of my aunt and uncle, like, while I was waiting to find a place. And so I load up my aunt and my cousins and their dog in the Prius to drive them back home because Irma's coming.
Yeah.
And that was another wild story. Like, we get going down the road and we're in Tampa and the tire blows out on the side of the highway.
Hurricane's coming.
And like, it is backed up traffic.
Mm-hmm.
So we get the tire changed, like, get to a Sam's Club, they put a new tire on, and by the time we get back on the road, it's bumper to bumper. We left on a Wednesday after school, Wednesday at 3. We got home Thursday at 10 o'clock.
Here,
and that was,
Illinois?
yeah, to Illinois. That was without stopping. That was me driving the whole time.
And only filled the Prius up once.
Yep.
Yes, and what's crazy is, it was totally a blessing that I had a Prius.
Yeah.
Because there were cars stuck on the side of the road that were out of gas.
Yeah.
Because every gas station was out of gas.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was like the apocalypse. I remember getting in.
Wow.
We finally got out of Florida at like 6 in the morning.
Wow.
Like,
On Thursday.
And that's
on
a drive.
Thursday.
And that's a drive from.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
just
that
go
whole
back,
state is nothing.
so
Yeah.
long.
So it
Yep.
took us like 20 hours to get out of Florida, when normally it would take like 5 or whatever. And so we get home, and again, like, got to make money. Like, I've got no money. So guy at church, Glenn Diener, was doing construction and roofing and asked me if I wanted to come roof. So while I was home for this 2 weeks or until we could go back, I'm working with him. And he's like, hey, there's a Bible study at church tonight for college and career age. You should go. I'm like, okay. I'm like, but I'm only home for 2 weeks. Like, there's going to be... So I get home.
I won't meet anybody.
Yeah, I get home and no one's home.
Life.
I'm like, where is everybody?
Yeah.
Like, my aunt's home, my cousins are home, my mom's like, where is everybody? So I'm like, oh, I guess I'll go to this Bible study. So I go to the Bible study, and it was on dating. And I sit there and I'm like, I was just honest with Jeremy. Jeremy was the pastor leading it. And I'm like, well, this is like what my schedule's like. So where do I even meet like a girl? And his answer was like church or, wherever. And I'm like, well, I've been just church hopping because I'm trying to find a church down there. And then there was a girl sitting across from me that was like, well, I'm a night shift nurse, like kind of the same story. And I knew of her, but I didn't really know her. Like, we somehow had followed each other on Instagram, and then we talked after. And then that Friday, which I am not the type to put myself out there towards girls.
There you go.
Like, I was always like the look for things business-wise or like opportunities. She messaged me, which was the only way, and was like, I have tickets to this concert. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go to this concert with you. But I was hanging out with my best friend who was in town. I'm like, well, like, my buddy Rhett's here. I'm supposed to be hanging out with him. She's like, I have 2 tickets. I'm like, okay. So he comes with me. And that was when that was kind of me and Ramey's first date. Okay. And so then I go back to Florida. They cancel the playoffs that year for high school, like all that stuff. It's a mess. And so we're talking like September through December. And I'm like, I've got to move back home.
So you guys are still talking?
Yeah, we're talking, like, we're calling every night, talking. Uh-oh. And so, and so in January, I like am really thinking, like, I come home for Christmas, and I'm like, all right, I got, like, I'm not in a career. I'm just bouncing. Yeah. So I moved back home. FCA had reached out because Jeremy knew an FCA rep. So that was when I started interviewing for Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I moved back in January. We get engaged in March. Then we get married in November because we're doing it God's way. Right. So very fast engagement because we were ready to go. So
it's funny with that long distance. Once you're apart and you're back together, how quick it just.
Like, it was funny. We drove back. She flew down and moved me back, and we were like, we were talking on the way home, just like, what do you picture like a wedding? Like your wedding? Like not talking about ours, but just like she's like fall,
Feelers.
like just feelers.
Feelers.
And so worked for FCA for 3 years, through all that, and then fast forward to COVID. That was really hard for my personality.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go be in schools.
Mm-hmm.
I was at home all the time.
Driving Remy nuts.
Well, she was working because she was an essential worker. She was in labor and delivery, and she was in Champaign, so she would work. She was still night shift, so she would sleep all day and then work at night. And I was just home, like going crazy.
Yeah.
From like March to April was fun because it was like a break.
Yeah.
So like on Xbox with my buddies, on the FCA Zoom calls, like trying to figure out what work looks like. Thankfully, it was still getting paid, like all that stuff. So it was kind of like this fun break, and then April was like a nightmare. Like, and I'm sure a lot of people can attest to that. Like April was like dark. Like I couldn't go train, so I was trying to work out at home. Like then I didn't care about diet. Like all that was just a mess. And so then May comes, and like Matt Bauer opened the weight station again, and I like I'm working out there in May, and then I'm still going nuts. Like I'm like I can't work, like I can't go in schools. Like it was the worst. It was the worst job to be able to be in because schools were so strict. Like there was no school.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't meet. Like we couldn't go to church. Like all my jobs were like shut down. So you give someone with my personality a lot of time, and the wheels start turning. So then there is a meeting with Matt in May about purchasing the gym because I've still had this like idea in the back of my head, so I've been putting money away, and that turns into a conversation like then through August, and then it's like okay, I've got a number now that I have to hit, so now I'm like okay, like these are the things I got to do to make this happen, and then it all just kind of felt like going back to I talk a lot about like don't burn bridges. The guy that I did that internship with for my dad's company at the time, I needed $10,000 to finish what I needed to go to the bank. And I called him, and I was like, hey, man, like, I know you invest in all this stuff. Like, this is what I need. He wanted the business plan, all that stuff. And I think the rate at the time was like 4%.
Yeah.
So I was like, we'll do what the bank, like, just match the bank. And he was like, hey, like, I'll do 10,000, but I want to change the interest rate. And I had like a number in my head that like I wasn't gonna go above. And I'm like, okay, like I know this guy's like a businessman, right?
No.
And he's like, I know like what you're about. He's like, I want to make it 2%. And I was like,
whoa,
wow.
I was like,
wow,
okay. Like so, he sends the check.
Where do I sign?
Yep. I was like, perfect. And so then that turned into going back to everybody from Class E that I had met, bankers and lawyers and LLC, and so used all those connections, and then we signed March 24th, 2021, so like yesterday. 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago yesterday. Yep.
2 years ago.
And that began that journey. And so before that, like Asher was born in December. Then I've got a 3-month-old, and I just closed on a gym. So that all kind of, it was crazy, but it all just kind of went back to like I said, don't lock up a crazy person for 3 months. Crazy things will happen.
But maybe we should lock him up a little bit. Just see what can happen next.
What keep him in here?
What is he building?
He can bounce off this and hurt himself.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, honestly though, like it's so awesome to think about just like your story, how just the circle has almost completely back around to where, you've hit hard times, and yet, even in 3 years or 2 years now, I'll get 3 years, Jim. Here we are, the three of us are starting, like, your wheel continues to turn.
Yeah.
And you're more of that central gear that's turning, and it's moving us to come along with you.
Sure.
Yeah, you were given a big gift.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, by God, to really be able to, like, see and have these visions like that I can't even see, and I don't know even.
I mean, just the simple fact that you reached out to people you didn't know. First, like
the courage.
I would have never.
No.
I'm like, nope.
I don't know what. Like it just seemed like it was the only option. But I think I talked about this last week. and I was thinking about it as I was kind of coming here today. Like, what it really boiled down to was the fear of not trying. And, like, it was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I have, like, stepped out and, like, been like, I'm going to be extremely uncomfortable, it forced growth. And then it built, like we've talked about, it built confidence. Like, stepping out and being like, I'm going to change position. Like, I'm going to go all in on this for football.
Hell, just starting out from going from high school football to college football.
Yep, and taking that
step. And then, then like you said, losing the weight and moving to this
and
position.
making that happen. And then being like, okay, I can go do that. And then moving to Florida and being like, I can do this. And I was good at that. And still have boys that I had for a season that talk to me and are power lifters now. And I'm like, that's so cool. And they're like, well, it's because you were powerlifting and all this stuff. And so every time I stepped out and it was extremely hard and awkward and uncomfortable and scary, like there was something learned and then there was growth. So now the next time I have to do it, it's not like I know like it's okay. And
so does fear push you? Like what pushes and pulls on you to continue and basically just not settling in a sense and just continue that growth? Because I mean, you have to think all of us are in pretty good spots in our lives where a lot of people will be like, you know what? I'm cool. I'm content. I've been blessed. This is good. But what keeps that drive? That drive. Because I love it.
Yeah.
Because I need it.
I think it's like three things. And one's really petty. The first is the fear that I get to heaven one day and God shows me everything that I was supposed to do and I didn't accomplish it because I was lazy or I was scared. I didn't want to do it. And so that's number one. Then number two, like the fear of like regret or not trying. Like if I have an idea and I try it and it fails, okay, at least I tried it and it failed. So that idea of like not doing something because I'm scared. And then the third one is this is very personal. Like all those guys from high school that like I felt so inferior to, I like the competitive side. Yeah. Like it drives me, like I don't know when I'll overcome this, but there will be guys that I played football with that will come into the gym like to do a day pass or whatever and act like I'm supposed to just give it to them.
Right.
And yet I will. And I feel so small when those guys come in. And I don't know why. Because I know their life. And I'm not calling, and I am kind of calling them out. Like, they bounce around from jobs. They go to the bar every night. They're not married. Or they're divorced. Or they've got multiple kids with multiple. And yet when they come in, I feel like that fat kid.
Yeah.
That was in high school. Was getting made fun of. That had this stereotype. And that pushes me a little bit. Because I'm like, I'm gonna continue to grow. Like, I'm not done. Because my biggest thing was, I always said, like, wouldn't it be really sad to peak in high school? And then I was like, well, it'd be really sad to peak in college. And it'd be really sad to peak in your early 20s. And I don't want, like, the max effort internship and going and working for Corey and working with Ronda Rousey and Travis Brown and these things is crazy.
Right.
But I don't want that to be the peak. Like, that's what drives me. Is I don't want to look back when I'm 50 and be like, oh, man, when I was 22, it was awesome. Like, that was the best time. And so I think that constant growth pushes because I want to continue to have things. I want to look back in 20 years and be like, remember when we thought the Arnold was going to be like the best thing ever?
Yeah.
Like,
you just keep setting that standard a little bit further away and a little bit further away. And that just keeps you driving towards, to get to there.
Yeah. I think, honestly, as you get older, it's what keeps you alive longer. Because if you just settle and you start slowly just tapping the brakes, you know, you've given up on gifts that were given to you, you know, through God. Yeah. And because, I mean, just by you alone and what we're doing, like that purpose in my life, not that it takes anything from my family by any means. It's just like, for me personally, it's allowing me to do things that I didn't think I'd be able to do. Yeah. You know, and so then everyone else hopefully will grab onto my coattails and we can go together.
It's good.
So no, I'm sure we've
blown through time because I've lived 4 lifetimes.
Yeah, you have definitely done a lot in 30 years. I mean, I thought I'd done a lot. I mean, nothing compares to just packing up everything the day after graduation and moving to Ohio for 3 months, and then
it's inspiring for anyone who listens to this, and just the idea of knowing, because you were 300 pounds, you lost over 100 pounds. So from the weight standpoint of people who think that they can't, no, you can. You're a prime example. You know, like in just 14 months of where you're like, it just takes time, and it takes, you know, the courage to be able to do this stuff and the faith in yourself to know that it's gonna be there. You just have to put in a little bit of work.
Sure. I hope that these 3 episodes that we've done kind of show people like we are just like everybody else. We are nothing special, but just 3 guys that have found something that has clicked and is working for us, and it's not some extreme measure that it took for us to get where we are. That every one of them can do the exact same thing.
We took a trauma and we didn't throw a pity party. We took that, and that's actually what's pushing us to actually be better.
Yeah, for sure.
So we appreciate it, Colton.
Yes. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned for the next 30 years and our next 40. Because we didn't peak on this episode. Episode 14 will be next week. So
phase 1.
Phase 1, baby.
That's right. All right, guys. That's episode 13. Peace.
Hello.